What is up, everybody? It's me, Duke Farley, back at it again here on Lost at Sea, and we are talking a little Survivor 44, episode 8, I believe. We missed last episode, but we are back for episode 8, and tonight I am joined by a good friend, Kris. You may have seen him on Ascendance Live, season 2,
Season
but
2, third boo.
third
Let's
boot.
go, third boo tonight. Let's go, Erica and memes.
Let's go.
Um,
What's up,
but
Kris? How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Duke?
I am doing good. I thought this episode of Survivor, you mentioned before we started recording, a lot happening, but then again, not too much.
Yeah, exactly. That was the theme of this episode for sure. I did get entertained here and there. And I found myself rooting for characters that I did not expect to root for in the beginning of the show, which was interesting. Um, but yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, so here, I actually usually never watch to the end of the episode to see who voted for who, but I just wanted to check because I thought the vote count was 6-4,
Thank
which
God you
was
did that because I was definitely going to ask you. Wait,
good. Yes, yes.
before you start, sorry. I took like a little bit of notes.
Okay,
And
nice.
while we were watching the show with my friends, and um I literally wrote on my paper what with exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, because I was so confused about the vote count. So
So yeah, it ended up being 6-4, right? And Danny idles Franny. So Brandon goes home on 4 votes. And the 4 votes were all, excuse me, so the 6 votes were on Franny, and the 4 votes for Brandon were the original Sokas, which is Franny, Heidi, and Danny, and then Caroline. She votes with them, and then the other two, so Tika's vote with Ratu, which was very interesting to me that that middle tribe
because
kind of
wasn't that
split their
Carson's
votes.
plan? Was that
Yeah,
Carson's plan that See, when that was when they were explaining that, I was literally yelling at my screen. I was like, Heidi, what are you doing? Like, no, I don't understand how this made sense. And I don't even understand how this benefits Carson's game, even if they were to execute it well. Like, did you understand how this would have benefited Carson's game? Uh, going
voting out.
with voting out Franny rather than keeping Brandon in the game,
Well, I do
or
think,
or voting out Brandon out the game rather.
yeah, I do think that it's interesting because I do think that Jam Jam and Carson, obviously, when they're talking to Heidi at the water well, are in an interesting spot. Like they probably would have been best off hearing out the plan, and then she tells them about the idol, and kind of just letting whatever happens happen as long as they don't get voted out. In my opinion, that's probably what the best thing. But once Carson starts talking to Danny about him knowing about the idol, that's when I was like, all right, well, you either get on board or not.
Exactly. And I don't know. I also wrote down that Heidi at the beginning of the sorry, backtracking, but at the beginning of the episode, Heidi's kind of like doing some damage control with Yam Yam because she used her advantage to vote Yam Yam out. And I found that very interesting because they were having this conversation like they were still aligned with each other in a way. And if I was Yam Yam, I would, or is it Yam Yam or Jam Jam? I want
I
to make
think you
sure
could
I'm
say either. I think I say
okay.
Jam Jam, but I
Okay.
think you could say it's YAM. So
Okay. I don't know what resonates more with me, Yam Yam or Jam Jam. I don't know. Jam Jam. Let's go with Jam Jam. Okay. So if I were Jam Jam, I would not trust Heidi at all. But here he is trusting Heidi. And then fast forward to the situation where Heidi is trying to corral people, the three Ratu, or the three Ratu and the three Sato?
it's she's from Soka and she's trying
Soka.
to get Tika.
Tika and Soka
Yeah.
together as six. And I don't know if they were buying it, but I would not trust Heidi in that situation either. And then she flips from that to Carson's plan. So I'm just like, Heidi, where are we going? Can we please find a plan and land on it and stick with it? Because next episode, I fully expect Heidi to like explain to Franny why she felt compelled to vote Franny out and do a whole bunch of backtracking. And I'm just like, oh no, this is so bad.
It's a lot. And it's going to be interesting because it seems like from the preview for the next episode, they're already thinking about switching, doing the old 1-2 switcheroo, which will be fun to see. What did you think though of Matt being on the jury? We got a lot of Matt looking at Franny, Franny looking back at Matt. You know, that connection. It's still there.
It's so cute, but at the same time, I'm like, can we move on? Like, y'all met each other 2 seconds ago. Y'all can do that in the jury, after the show. But I do, I do feel for them. I think it's cute. But yes, I mean that's all Matt really contributed in like in retrospect of things is this showmance for the show, and that's it. That's all we have so far. So I feel like that's another thing I wanted to go over is that I feel like this season, like a whole bunch of like that whole tribal council, no shade. Like I was a little bored because they kept indirectly but kind of directly talking about things, but nothing was being clarified. I felt like it was rambling a little bit too much about something so obscure. Like, you know how Jeff likes to go on his tangents. So I'm just like sitting there, I'm like, so what are we talking about here? Because y'all are talking about the future, the past, and the present, and I don't know what's going on. But with that being said, I just wanted to say, like, I feel like this season needs a little bit more to get going, and I felt like this idol play was something that spiced up the show in a good way, because so far, I don't know, I felt I'm, you know, not being overwhelmed or not being underwhelmed, but just whelmed. I'm like kind of just whelmed with the season so far. No shade.
No shade.
But no shade, because like I said, all we have is the love story between Franny and Matt, which is so overplayed. And then we have Carolyn. I was a Carolyn stan this whole time. But then this episode, I'm like, Carolyn, you're making this hard, Carolyn, to root for you. And
Yeah,
then I'm like, sorry, go ahead.
it's interesting. Carolyn, this episode, um, she seems to be she seemed to have the edit of Yam Yam's like sidekick. It's what they're trying to like display to us because Brandon is mentioning how, you know, he saved Jam Jam and, you know, he is planning on working with Jam Jam during this vote, and he just assumes that wherever Jam Jam goes, Carolyn is going to go. So it's like, is that what we're being fed now? That Carolyn's kind of just a sidekick at this point?
Carolyn's storyline has progressed in a very strange way. At first, everyone slept on Carolyn,
Right.
and then her hystericalness, is that a word? She's
Hysteria,
hysterical. Her hysteria, thank you.
I think.
Uh Maybe, possibly, but you know what we mean. Um has, charmed us in a way where we want to root for her, because even though she might go about things in a very unorthodox way, she got the results and job done that,
Yeah.
the right plays that truly benefited her done. So we're like, okay, maybe we're sleeping on her. But now she's being painted as Yam Yam's or Jam Jam's. I don't know. It's gonna fluctuate back and forth. I'm sorry, Jam
We know
Jam.
who he is.
But being his sidekick, I don't understand why, because in confessionals, we get badass Carolyn. And she's talking about her strategy in a compelling way, but in the game, that's not being reflected at all. And then Brandon was like, yeah, Carolyn will just basically follow where Jam Jam goes. So is she not talking to anybody else? How good is Carolyn's social game?
Yeah. And we won't know until the next couple episodes, but I think Brandon leaving is great for Carolyn, right? Because he kind of just put her in that spot, or that's how he viewed her. What did you think? It's going to be interesting to see because we know that original Tika was aware of the idol happening, and I think they're positioned really well. Those three: Carson, Carolyn, and Yam Yam, firmly in the middle. And now there's three on the other each side, so they kind of have leeway to go wherever they want at this point. Are those three
Yes.
people that you are rooting for? I know you mentioned you enjoyed Carolyn, but do you like Carson? Do you like Yam Yam?
So yes, I do. Even though she irks me at times, I do love Carolyn. Jam Jam, I have this love-hate relationship with Jam Jam because Jam Jam reminds me of like a cousin back home that like I could resonate with and would feel at home with. But if that's the energy I'm getting all game, like where is the strategy? I need a little bit more strategy when it comes to Jam Jam. I do think he's playing a phenomenal social game just because his personality is so charismatic and charming. But that can only take you so far in this game, especially since his strongest allies are Carolyn and Carson. Carson being a snake and a calculating snake, and Carolyn being a hysterical woman. Like, do you want to place all your bets with those two? I don't know. We'll see how that plays. But I do like the three as a whole because it gives me wild card energy, and I
They're the
love
Three
a good wild
Stooges.
card. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So who knows? They're big targets. I now with saying this, I'm now thinking about them being such in the spotlight because they're kind of I feel like their position is very out there right now because they're fighting to keep the three, and then you have three versus three. So they could just do whatever Heidi was just talking about this episode, but reverse and target one of them. Difficulty is that Carolyn has an idol, but that doesn't protect Carson or Jam Jam.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Soka and Ratu kind of like compare notes and notice that these three people are just kind of bouncing in between both of them
Yeah.
right now. Um, Speaking of Carson, rough episode, puking all over the place. Had to feel for him, huh? Too much PB and J.
I just got to know, was the PB crunchy or creamy? That plays a critical factor in everything.
Probably crunchy.
Are you team crunchy, Duke?
I'm team creamy.
Oh, okay. I'm team creamy for like 90% of the time, and then crunchy, sometimes when I'm like, texture. Uh, but why is that a clip?
Yes, I will definitely
Well,
clip that.
what was I saying? Yeah, Carson had it rough, puking all over the place, and not only that, his partner was Carolyn, who was hysterical during that mud challenge, and not only that, Carolyn gets out 10 seconds before the challenge is over, and Carson just leaps in the mud and gets even dirtier than Carolyn looks. Somehow. I don't know how he gets drenched in mud and he has more mud than Carolyn in the challenge, but poor baby had to wait all challenge long. I literally wrote down this quote. Carolyn, you're doing great.
He was he was
Like
he was so depleted. He had no energy.
I was so sad for them
That
entirely this
that net, I'll tell you something. That net, I would be so scared to jump into that thing and be caught in the mud. Like, fuck
really.
that. Claustrophobia. No, I would not.
Oh,
That shit being wrapped up and like you can't move and you're just stuck in the mud. And then like,
I haven't even thought about that. Yeah, if you're
what if
claustrophobic, that would be a huge challenge for you. I did not even think about that, but I was thinking the whole time, just gotta do the alligator roll. Like you just gotta use your hips. And my friend was like, who was watching with me, she was like, the hips are the problem. They don't have hips. I was like, oh, I was like, no. But
what did you
anywho.
What did you think of the setup of you had to pick your partner to begin with,
Mhm.
and then at the end of it, they were competing as individuals, the remaining four. I don't think we've ever seen that
No,
where
we have. I don't know
that's
what
happened
season it
before.
was. I don't know what season it was, but it was on a recent season in the 40s, where they competed in teams and they were like, "Oh, is it double immunity?" And no, it was just single immunity. So that's why I wasn't surprised. I was like, this is jury phase. Like they rarely push more than one immunity nowadays, I feel like.
Yeah. Did you like the setup of like kind of the heats?
Um, I was entertained. I was entertained by the theatrics of the challenge, like Carolyn falling into despair. Like that whole thing was fun. I liked the net theme. Like there was a lot of nets going on. The only thing I would critique is like the endurance challenge at the end of all of that. I don't know if that felt like the right fit, just because the first part of the challenge felt very physical, like a physical competitor could win. But then the endurance part, obviously there's a lot that plays into, into winning this challenge. And I feel like it's kind of at a disadvantage for certain archetypes that would do amazing in the first half of the challenge and then
Yeah.
completely fall flat at the end of the challenge, like we saw with Kane and Brandon, because they ate up the first half of the challenge, but then body
They just don't
weight and
have
then
they don't
like
have small feet.
yeah, exactly. So I'm like, this is kind of a bummer because they really worked hard for this, but so did Lauren. I'm not discrediting Lauren at all for her win, but I'm just saying like the cards were stacked against the big guys at the end of the challenge there.
What'd you think of Danny farting during the middle of it?
That took me out. I was dead. I was on the floor. I, I was screaming.
I feel like that's a disadvantage to himself because that air is just going right up to him.
If I were Lauren, he would be my next target. How dare you? Fart, and we're in an endurance competition. I'm right next to you.
At least there's a huge wall though, but it is out in the open, so she probably got a little hint of it.
True.
And there's a
Probably
lot of
smelled
mud.
like coconuts and crab.
Yes.
Lovely.
Um, I thought that Lauren winning, there was like a huge reaction to that because she was such the underdog, I guess, coming into it. And she was so emotional. I thought it was so fun to watch her win and see the reaction of not only all the tribe, but she was and Jeff hugging her with all the mud.
I don't know why, but I feel like most of the show, like Lauren has like this like very stern, like direct gazing face. And we
Yeah,
don't get much conversation with Lauren anyway. So like my first interpretation of Lauren was, oh, she's a little intense.
yeah.
She might be focused. I don't know what her agenda is, but seeing this much emotion coming from her made me like smile and root for her more. I was really happy for her because I felt like I was like placing myself in her shoes. Like if I won immunity after jury phase, I would be ecstatic and elated as well. And I think it wasn't without any purpose because Lauren's name has been floating around, and I feel like if Lauren had not won immunity, her name could have been tossed in the pool, and maybe that would have benefited Yam Yam more. And I was thinking about that because they were in a good spot to target Lauren or Franny this vote, but then Lauren won immunity, so that kind of threw in Jam Jam into a little bit of danger, but that didn't like last a long at all. But I thought that was interesting that because Lord won, another name was tossed in the pool briefly.
Yeah, I think that's completely right because her name was floating around like literally last round. People are scared of the extra vote that she has. So if she had not won, I would have been shocked if she wasn't the one to go home tonight as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to Brandon.
Yeah, especially since she. Okay, is there a rumor that she still has an extra vote, or did she already use her extra vote last tribal council? I'm a little
I,
confused on that.
I believe she still has it. I
So
don't
she
think
still
she used it.
has an extra vote.
Yeah.
So she didn't vote at all last tribal council?
No, because she did vote, but she had
She
to
voted
vote
for
for who
Jam Jam.
she had to vote for Jam Jam. Yeah.
Oh, interesting that she didn't use. I thought I had assumed that she had used her extra vote during that tribal council. So she was still, yeah, even more so to vote her out. She has an extra vote. So, you
Yeah.
know, all things considered, I thought that was pretty good on Lauren for winning individual immunity.
It's interesting that you say that you didn't realize that she had an extra vote because it was confusing, and she did met like at that tribal council, she said, does this count for my extra vote? So I feel like a lot of the players might assume that she did use her vote, but the way
Right.
that
I wonder if
um
that was intentional, like kind of like a poker play from Lauren. I need
yeah.
to, yeah.
Um but besides that, I'm looking through my notes. I don't think there's anything else with this specific episode that I have, but who are you rooting for? Who do you like, and
Oh my
who do you want to
gosh.
win?
This is crazy. This is a loaded question. It's
Final
been
nine.
it's crazy this season. I feel like that's another reason why I said earlier that I'm like kind of I was warming up to this season. I feel like it is heating up and it's probably going to get better and better. But it took a little time, and the reason because of that is because I haven't had a clear defined person to like really root for yet. I feel like we haven't gotten like great personality connections with the audience and the cast yet. Only for a select few individuals, and a few of them have gone home. I was starting to like root for Brandon because I thought he was playing a good social game and he's a physical threat, but obviously he got voted out. Um,
What did you think of the decision to go to for them to go for Brandon here? Did you think that was the right choice?
okay, if I were in the game and if I were not Brandon, and if I were hearing that Brandon was being targeted all of a sudden because he was a big physical threat, I would have to assess if I were working with Brandon and if I had a great relationship with him already. So say like if I was on his tribe and I heard all of this, I would absolutely want to keep Brandon in the game. Just because he's a shield and people are going to want to target him more. Even if you're not directly working with him, I feel like he does serve a good purpose of being a shield as well. If he's not directly targeting you, the problem is not knowing if he's directly targeting you. Like if I were Jam Jam, Carson, or Carolyn, I would for sure want to keep. I would see why wanting to keep Brandon um, might have served them purpose, but I don't think their target should have been Franny either, especially for like some of the like Carson specifically. Like, why would you want? I don't understand why you would want to get rid of another like strategical threat, because I feel like that's the archetype Franny is going for right now.
Yeah. I think it came down to um it's going to be the final nine, right? And so
Right.
it seemed like Ratu, the four of them, were super tight
Mm-hmm.
and they were not going to break. Lauren has an extra vote. So if you let all four of them get to the final nine and then the extra vote included, that's five votes. So it's like they really have the power at that point. So you kind of have to get rid of one of them.
And Brandon
Um,
being the spearhead of that group, I feel like is the best option. So
yeah,
like, yeah, I will redact my statement. Like there is merit to keeping Brandon in the game, but if you're not on that tribe, uh you would definitely want to target Brandon. Just because it would weaken them a lot. And I feel like that's such a power statement move that after the vote, people are going to be kind of shaky about wanting to stay strong for the remaining of the game, and then opportunities develop there.
yeah. And when you say that, I think I agree with that because throughout this episode, it seems like Brandon was like going to everybody and just kind of telling them it's going to be Franny. Like that's what the plan is.
I was a little
Um,
annoyed by that scene. I wrote down on my paper, I was like, is everyone saying, okay, I'm anybody but me? It's okay. I'll write down anybody's name, anybody but me. And I was wondering, I was going to ask you, Duke, is that like the best strategy? Like if everyone is saying it's not me, I'll write down anybody's name. Because I felt like Heidi said that, Jam Chan said that, Carson said that, everyone on that episode. And Brandon is the only one is like, so Franny, right? Anybody but me. I'm cool with voting down Franny. Like, what is that? I was a little annoyed because I was thinking, does anyone have a game to play? Any other agendas? And then Heidi proved me wrong for 2 seconds until she redacted her original plan to go for a plan that didn't work. So then I was annoyed by that too. But yeah, what do you think, Duke, about the anybody but me, or I'm chill with writing down anybody's name?
I think that it just does, like, for Danny and Heidi, when that kind of when somebody's telling you who it is and it's a person that was on your original tribe, your ally, right? You kind of have to say that, right, to
Mhm.
them. I'm just so shocked that the people from Ratu did not let this was like seemed to be like a true blindside to them. Like, you have to imagine that other tribe's going to talk to the tribe that's in the middle as well, and potentially, try to vote one of your people out, right? I mean,
Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way. I I don't I one would assume. One would assume.
yeah. I mean, Brandon seemed shocked, so I was kind of like, wow, kind of didn't see that coming, but I feel like you probably should have, right?
Did they you said that they knew about the idol play, or did they not know about the idol play?
Um, so the people that did not know were the Ratu people. So Brandon,
Oh, so
Kane.
all of Ratu up until Tribal did not know about the idol play. So Jam Jam kept that hush.
It seems like it, right?
Okay.
Um, because they also, yeah, it seems like they would keep it hush because Yam Yam and Carson voted with them. So I
Mhm.
feel like they probably just said, yeah, no, we'll vote out for any with you guys. And then kind of they knew about the idol happening and just let it happen.
That's crazy. I mean, I don't know. It placing myself in the Ratu tribe's shoes, if I did not know about Danny using the idol, that being a possibility play, I could see why they would run into that trap. And for Brandon specifically, like, there's not much you can do unless you had a better social game where you would kind of know where the idol was, or someone clues you in on the plan last minute. I feel like those are the only two saving factors for you if you're Brandon. Even if you expected it, like, there's not much you can do in that situation without winning individual immunity.
Yeah. Which is sad. We see Brennan go home here, 6-4, four
Yeah.
votes, six
Played a great
eliminated.
game, I feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah, he just, that's what happens in Survivor.
So he is the second member of the jury. Who do you think's in trouble next?
Hmm. Okay, I have two like different dimension universe, whatever you want to call it. Um, one where Carson, Jam Jam, and Carolyn, their position gets blown up, and the two opposite tribes or former tribe members band together and vote one of them out, or attempt to. Um,
Mhm.
and the other way I would like to think is, who voted for Franny, or who voted for Brandon to go again? It was Danny, Franny, and who else?
Danny, Franny, Heidi, and Carolyn.
Heidi and Carolyn voted for Brandon as well.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I feel like, hmm, that's really, really, I don't know. Let me hear your opinion first. I want to hear your opinion first.
I think, well, what the on the next episode preview showed us was that Carolyn's pissed at Danny. Now, I think that's probably just to get us excited for next week. So I
Mhm.
think that they're going to continue to vote out Ratu. I think they're going to either try to flush Lauren's extra vote, or they'll vote out Kane.
Okay, see, I wanted to say that they would vote out Ratu, but I was kind of also picture the numbers. What are the numbers against Ratu? Because there's four Ratu. That's a pretty. I mean, you think all five member opposite or not them? So the other five members, them being Carolyn, Carson, Jam Jam, and Heidi, and who else? Jamie.
So there's 3 from each original tribe at this point. There's 3 Ratu, which is Lauren,
Oh, I thought they
Kane.
had five.
They had 4, but they had an extra vote. Have an extra vote.
Oh my gosh, this editing. Okay, okay.
It's a
Continue.
lot.
Sorry.
Um, so there's Ratu, which is Kane, Lauren, and Jamie. And then there's Tika, which is Carson, Yam Yam, and Carolyn. And then there's Soka, which is Franny, Danny, and Heidi.
Mm.
So it's kind of like, the Tikas are in the middle. They kind of have the power right now, but will the other 2 tribes figure that out?
That's the question. I feel like if you were in Tika's position, would you who would you want to work for? Ratu or Soka?
Probably Ratu,
That's what
because
I was thinking too. Because also Lauren has an extra vote, right?
and I feel like if you work with Ratu and get, say, like a Danny or a Franny out, um, I don't know. I feel like going to the end with Soka, it would be harder to beat them. They seem like people that have more winner equity. All 3 of them.
And
Whereas I feel like Jamie, Lauren, and Kane, we really haven't seen much of.
yeah, they're very like actually I don't want to be rude, but like the edit has given us
Not much.
crumbs.
I mean, Lauren had
uh,
a great episode this week, though.
today. That was a
Today.
highlight.
A little late,
Lauren,
but
yeah. Um, but if you're Soka, who would you want to team up with as well?
Ratu still, because I feel like
Really?
they're the people that
You would be at the end.
you would be at the end. Yeah,
So are you saying that Tika are like
people should be
the
looking at Tika, I think, but will they?
okay? Would you, if you're hypothetically speaking, if you're on the jury, you would give like the winning edit or like the winning vote to one of those members if you had to vote right then and there.
If I had to vote right now, I would vote for probably Carson to win the game. I think he's played the best so far.
Mm,
But I really do like Jam Yam's game. So
okay.
it would be fun between those 3.
It's really interesting how like I'm really warming up to these different playing styles because they're so unorthodox. You rarely get to see like any of these characters get far in a game like this, which I do think it's really nice to see. But because of that, it also makes me want to question like where are this I know Survivor is not all about strategy, but
Where are
where
the
are the
main
strategists?
strategists?
Right. I
Yeah,
want to know where the threats are. I'm not saying they're not threats at all, but where are the in quotations threats? I need to see a little bit more of that to make things a little bit more spicy. You know what I mean?
I think that you could say Carson's a pretty good strategist, but I think you could also say Franny's a good strategist, but she just kind of got in a bad position at
Mm,
this particular vote. She doesn't really have
true.
too much wiggle room at this point.
Yeah, you're
And
right on that.
I mean, Heidi did have a kind of an erratic episode, but she did put into play, you know, getting Brandon out. So,
That's true. That's true. I feel like
and then
I feel
Danny's
like
just kind of farting.
what do you if you were Danny, do you think Danny did a good move this episode? Do you believe in this move to take out Brandon?
I think it was not great for Danny long term. I think because it's a flashy thing and people are probably going to look at that soon and try to want to get him out. And he's, the one that's you would think is finding advantages often. So people are probably threatened by that. Plus, I think Brandon specifically going, it would make people look at Danny closer because he's probably the next challenge beast.
Yeah. So I feel like that could be something that we would have to look out for maybe in the future because I feel like he is a threat in that regard, and I think that was a win-win for Franny tonight because not only did she get saved, but now there's a target in front of her and Danny because he's definitely I would associate them two together after that move, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's all I have on my paper.
Well, Chris, it's been great catching up with you and great talking about this episode of Survivor, man.
This was so fun. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for listening to my voice. It's always a pleasure. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome, Chris.